Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil. Today, we're going to be talking about when to Relic 8 your characters. And I'm probably one of the few people in this game who is very, stingent. I shouldn't say few, but I'm very stingent with my Relic 8s. It's not something that I spend easy. And that comes not only from the time that it took me to get there, but recognizing just how important they are to the game and how devastating it can be to your account if you're a little bit too loose with these. If you're a little bit too I can just do whatever I want with them. I'll have plenty of time, and then all of a sudden all these things come out and you realize you don't have enough. We're also only going to be looking at this from the perspective of Relic 8. We're going to ignore Relic 9. And the reason we're going to ignore Relic 9 is because there's a whole different list of criteria with Relic 9. Relic 8 is a very different kind of conversation to have. It's hard to think about Relic 8s without Relic 9 looming over your head. So I think the best way to think about it is that there's certain characters that you take to Relic 8 simply because they like Relic 8. And then there's characters that you have to get to Relic 8 because you want to Relic 9 them. So bear that in mind. Whenever we talk about Relic 9, we'll talk about those characters who want to be Relic 8 because they need Relic 9s. With that, please like and subscribe, comment down below. Let's give a shout to our channel members for their continued support. You know, you guys are an amazing part of this community. I cannot stress how much I appreciate all of you. This game's been around for over 9 years, and you guys, whether you started at the beginning or you've only recently started playing, it's so important to have you, and I am honored to have you as channel members. Let's get into this video. Let's talk about Relic 8. Alright, folks, so with Relic 8s, we're going to kind of look at some criteria here. Now, in this video, we're going to say Recs do not count, right? Recs exist outside of this, hey, I've got to update requirements, it is what it is. And neither do anything you do for operations, because those are different, right? You kind of, you have to do those for your guild, or you have to do those if you want to get the Galactic Legend, or, the ship that you want. Those exist outside this realm, right? That we can't, I'm not going to knock you for doing those. That's what you should be doing. We're talking about those Relic 8s that aren't specifically called out and required, but maybe they make sense. What criteria can you use? When does it make sense? So the first one we're going to use is this matching principle. And I use this to describe a lot of stuff in, capital games in Galaxy of Heroes. So in this case, looking at the characters in this squad, you've got Commander Tano, Snips, General Kenobi, and Padme. All of them are at least Relic 8. And then Jedi Master Kenobi himself is Relic 7. So you look at that and you say, that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't quite make sense. So that's when you want to increase his Relic level, is when you kind of get to this point, you realize, hey, you know what? He's the only character in this squad that isn't Relic 8. And why that can be important is that's another team I could use for combat missions or operations or whatever it is, right? That will improve the entire team, because having a weak link in a team can sometimes get exploited. And especially when it's someone like Kenobi, who really, if obviously his team, he's a, kind of hard GL to beat, but if he's not at the right Relic level, this team could absolutely get exploited by certain people. It's one of the big reasons I have to use this team on offense sometimes, is because with Kenobi only being Relic 7, that can be a problem for me. So yeah, the matching principle is a good one to use there to kind of determine when to make those changes. Alright, the next is what I'll call purposeful Relic 8s. Now, with purposeful Relic 8s, what we're really talking about is PvE purpose. I'm not talking that, every Relic 8 is going to get an increase in Grand Arena in Territory Wars. We're talking about those characters that, because you're going to increase them to Relic 8, it's going to get you access to something, whether it's in territory battles or, in maybe, a raid or whatever, right? That there's a legitimate purpose to it. So I'm looking at the Inquisitors here. They have the special mission on the Haven class medical station. They can also be used in combat missions at that Relic 8 level. That's a purposeful Relic 8. There's a legitimate purpose to having them at Relic 8. They're going to provide you with some sort of return, right? It's not just a team at Relic 8 that, they're good in GAC, I'm going to be using them. So that purposeful isn't just talking about PvP. We're really looking at that PvE, that there's a specific purpose that by bringing the Gungans to Relic 8, you're scoring more points in the Naboo raid, That's where we're looking at here when we talk about purpose. Sometimes I think we get a little bit twisted. Purposeful is really talking about PvE purpose, that there's a good reason to bring this team to Relic 8, and it's going to help you either get better rewards or, do more, right? So, again, I have Inquisitors here. It's a team I would love to take this whole team to Relic 8. It's probably going to be happening at some point, hopefully 2025. That would be awesome. But we'll have to wait and see depending on how everything's kind of shaken out there. All right, the next one. So this is probably where all of you are like salivating. You kind of, see Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Everybody loves to relegate him. When mods are no longer enough. What I mean by this is that, again, the entire purpose of increasing a character to relegate is getting better stats. Right? You're trying to get better stats. You're making that character better. But your first line of defense at making a character better is get better mods. And you can be like, "Oh, Phil, it's so hard to do." I get it, right? But my argument here is that, taking a Supreme Leader Kylo Ren with garbage mods to relegate is, being like as useful as a poopy flavored lollipop, to quote Dodgeball. That, like, you're not, sure, you're getting some extra stats, but you're not really getting the full benefit of that Relic 8 because your mods are so poor. Like it's like putting a Band-Aid on, somebody who just got open heart surgery. Like that's not really doing the right thing. So when mods are no longer enough, right? When your mods are at the point where they're so good for that character that for you to get any better mods is going to be more of a challenge than bringing them up a relic level. And I've got Royal Guard here because Royal Guard's only Relic 7, that I've got some pretty good mods on Royal Guard as it is. That for me to get much better mods on this guy, I've got a couple I can make better here and there. But overall, the mods are doing what they should, right? It's got good stats. For me to get much better stats out of him, it's easier for me to take him to Relic 8 than it would be for me to find better mods, right? Where there's other characters in my account, there are plenty of characters who I can find much better mods for them, and it wouldn't be that hard and would save me a Relic 8 to get the desired stats out of them. So, again, when mods are no longer enough for you to get a meaningful upgrade on that character, that's when a Relic 8 can make sense. That, like, you've kind of tapped out the mods, you've gotten the stats that you can out of them, time to take that character Relic 8. Again, that's one of the criteria. That's not saying, oh, as soon as you get great mods on somebody, Relic 8. We're talking, down the line here, right? Because it's going to take you a while to get here. Like, I didn't take my Kylo to Relic 8 until this year, right? Like, 2024. So, my Relic 8 Kylo is not even a year old. All right, the next one here I kind of call significant change. So this can kind of flip into a little bit of that purposeful Relic 8, but I think a better way to say this is that the character is going to significantly change. I think it's just kind of a repeat of up here, but I came up with a better name, but like, it's a purpose Relic 8. There's a significant change to them that because they're Relic 8, they're going to be able to do something that they weren't able to do before. For my Darth Bane, this really had to do with the, when he came into the game, there was the Rey and Holdo Datacrons, and Bane was without his Datacron and without good Relic levels. Like, I would have lost plenty of Grand Arenas had he not been Relic 8. So sometimes there's a certain character, and it's very few, where that Relic 8 will significantly change their performance in PvP. And significantly means that they're not going to be able to, it opens up a new counter for them, right? So for Darth Bane, that was, at the time, Rey. And then I have Leia Organa here because, that significant change for her Relic 8, at least now, is going to be facing characters like Ahsoka, right? That having your Leia a little bit higher could help you beat Ahsoka more regularly, or when you're in a mirror match against other Leias, it's a significant boost for her. She does like Relic 8. But again, I was much higher in GP when I did both of these things, right? So again, significant change can also be relative to what you're facing. And I'm going to show a good example here. In my own guild, if I go to the leaderboards here, and I'm going to open up Zangster's account. So Zangster is a, I know for a fact that Zangster, I don't think he spends. And when you go to his unaligned Force users, his Kylo, or his Star Killer is only Relic 5. Mine's Relic 7, and I'm lower than him, but he's got a Relic 5 Star Killer and Malicos, and he has a better GAC ranking than me. Now, he's got some other relics, right? He's chosen to relic other characters, but the argument I'm making here is that, getting Starkiller to Relic 7 is not as significant of a change. Like, it's not going to open up that you're going to be able to all of a sudden beat Ray. That for most of you, I guarantee you a significant change to your Starkiller is probably just better mods, and that will allow you to beat Ray, or like you're already doing it. That significant change means there's something you weren't able to do and now you were, right? That's my argument here. Like, Starkiller can counter Ray with probably mediocre mods, and, you know, he doesn't need high relic levels. So, again, just significant change. I need you to think through that, and, you know, and that's a little bit subjective, but, you know, try your best. But this is the most important one. Save the best for last. You're all caught up. This should be the first criteria for you spending a lot of these relic gates, is you're all caught up, or most of the way. That, like, with the addition of Ahsoka now, it blurred a little bit, right? But I didn't spend, when you look at this year, and when I spent, you know, all those, you know, and I say all, but like I spent a bunch of Relic 8s, did a bunch of Relic 9s. It was when I'd gotten Leia, I'd gotten Leviathan, I had every other requirement done in the game. And so because I did that, I felt the comfort that I could make these updates happen in my account, and it wasn't going to set me back for forever. And when I think about where I'm trying to head now, with going for GL Ahsoka, going for Baylan, with those two things kind of looming over me, I definitely can notice that I don't quite have as much signal data. That when I look at the journey guide, you know, I've got enough for Merrick and Shin and potentially maybe even Darkside Ray. I don't know that I'd have enough signal data for Baylan himself yet, but I definitely don't have enough to do any further upgrades for Ahsoka until I'm ready. And if I hadn't done some of those Relic 8s or Relic 9s, I would have that signal data kind of ready to go. Again, just making the argument that just because you have the resources available doesn't mean you should do it, particularly if you aren't caught up. Because a lot of you, it's kind of like when you first enter adulthood and you get your first big boy or big girl job. You know, like when I first entered the workforce, I was still living at home. So I was living with my parents, and my bank account was hitting some crazy numbers. It was looking really, really good. And then I bought a house, and then I got dogs and cats, and then I had children, and all of a sudden, you know, bank account wasn't looking so good. Because I didn't have expenses. Like, I hadn't really done anything crazy yet. So that's where a lot of you are, where you haven't done those Kenobi, Lord Vader, you know, Ahsoka. You go to the ships, you haven't done Profundity and Leviathan. You haven't really dipped your feet into those farms that require that signal data, require those relic gates. And when you start doing that, you'll start to see just how hard it is to stomach doing a relic gate on a character that you don't really need when you have all this other stuff looming over your head. And many of you are getting closer to those things. You've been kind of able to skirt around that by going for Leia, going for Jabba. Now they've got the Lightspeed bundles out for these GLs, so all of a sudden your options for farming Galactic Legends are time to buck up and spend those Relic 8s. And if you're sitting there with a Relic 9 Starkiller, Legolas, you're sitting there way behind some of these other players who didn't spend that signal data. Again, I'm not trying to, you know, put everybody on blast. Legolas knows I love him. I love to just, you know, I like to, like, pick out a few people here and there and, you know, poke the bear a little bit. But overall, guys, I hope this helps you kind of understand how to spend your Relic 8s, right? How I've always looked at it. It's not just a, you know, they should really fit almost all of this criteria, right? That, yes, like, you're all caught up. That's an easy one. But, okay, it's a significant change. You've got the mods on them that, you know, for you to make an impact to their stats now, you got to look outside of mods. You know, hey, they're going to serve a purpose in PvE, and, oh, I can match them up with the rest of their team. Like, use this criteria, and I promise you your Relic 8 upgrades will go so much better, and it might even halt for a very long, and for most of you, you don't need them. Like, if I can tell you one thing at the end of this video, if you can, you know, those of you still watching, you get this tidbit, right? This is something my father taught me about, like, when I was running in the wintertime. And he'd always say, it's not cool to be cold. And 2, you can always take off clothes you have on if you're too hot. You can't put more clothes on if you're too cold, right? If you don't bring them, you can't put them on. And so it's the same thing with relics. I can always go and equip this Relic 8 on Kenobi. I can always go and equip this Relic 8 on Royal Guard or my Inquisitors, but I can't take it off. Once it's on there, it's on there. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you find out that you did something and then all of a sudden, like, you don't need it, right? You're like, you know, you would never know that because, like, you know, but go try something. Go try to beat some characters with low relics on, with lower relics on your stuff and see, hey, is it working? Maybe I don't need this Relic 8. So that's my Relic 8 rant. Let me know your thoughts down below. Again, I do this video probably once or twice, 3 times a year. I don't know. Just to make sure that you guys are getting that content across. I love you so much. Thank you again for everything you guys do. See you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.